Did your parents ever tell you that you were special? That you could be anything you wanted? Like the president, a pro athlete, or a doctor? Well, they were probably wrong. Or maybe they weren't. Who's to say? But one thing's for sure. Some people grow up to be very, very different. In fact, bizarre. And today, we're going to look at some of those individuals. How far would you go to prove a theory? Stubbins Ffirth, a doctor in training living in Philadelphia during the early 19th century, went further than most. And by that, we mean way further. Let me set the mood. The year is 1793. Caribbean refugees are escaping their country for land of opportunity. However, these bros brought yellow fever with them. Added shithead mosquitoes, and boom. Now there was a perfect vehicle for spreading the disease. For those infected, the disease would initially cause pain in the head, back, and limbs, along with a high fever. Symptoms would somewhat disappear, and then they would get severe fever, yellow skin, and black vomit. After a while, the victim turned a little crazy and then died. In its first summer, it is estimated that about 2,000 people died from yellow fever. Funny story, while I was researching, apparently, a patient went so crazy that he ran from his hospital bed into the streets and jumped into a river, where he drowned. Anyways, back to Ffirth. In 1801, after having observed that yellow fever ran wild during the summer but disappeared during the winter, he concluded that it was not a contagious disease. Instead, he theorized that it was caused by an excess of stimulants such as heat, food, and noise. To prove his theory, Ffirth set out to demonstrate that no matter how much he exposed himself to yellow fever, he wouldn't catch it. Just as an FYI, he did test his theories on dogs and cats first, but we are a family-friendly channel, so we will just pretend like that never happened. Anyways, Ffirth started by making small incisions on his arm and pouring fresh black vomit, obtained from a yellow fever patient, into his cuts. And what do you think happened? Although C is a very intriguing option, I can indeed confirm that he did not become Venom. Although, that would be badass. Fortunately enough for us, he was completely fine. And why is that fortunate? Well, stick around, we're getting to it. His following experiments would continuously get weirder and weirder. His next assessment involved taking vomit, adding it into an eyedropper, and squeezing it into his eyes. He would then try frying up some vomit on a skillet and inhaling the fumes. Finally, he took to drinking an entire glass of pure, undiluted black vomit. And he still didn't get sick. Ffirth rounded out his experiment by liberally smearing himself with yellow fever-tainted fluids, such as blood, saliva, perspiration, and urine. Healthy as ever, he declared his theory proven. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Yellow fever is actually very contagious, but it requires direct transmission into the bloodstream, usually by a mosquito. Considering all Ffirth did to infect himself, it is a bit of a miracle that he remained alive. The cure for yellow fever was eventually discovered by U.S. Army physician Major Walter Reed in 1901. Imagine you're back in the 1830s. You're invited to a Christmas dinner at the home of one of Britain's most celebrated scientists. You take a seat next to a couple of children, then across from your host. You can smell what can only be assumed as the best dinner ever. Eyes closed. You can taste the turkey, mutton, and mouth-watering side dishes. Finally, the plate is put right in front of you, only to find out that it is mouse on toast. Your host is William Buckland, and he's a zoophage, which is someone with a passion for eating one of every animal on Earth. Buckland was known for being a groundbreaking geologist and paleontologist. But that is not why he made this list. He is here because he had an obsession with eating everything. And if you think that just includes animals, then you're going to want to stick around. Dinner at Buckland's household would consist of animals like hedgehog, crocodile, panther, sea slug, swan, mole, earwig. But that does not even compare to what he ate on one frightful night. A mummy. Okay, maybe it's not a whole mummy, but just pay attention. It was once tradition in France to remove organs from the body of dead kings and queens so that they could be embalmed and placed into ornate reliquaries. This was the treatment given to the heart of King Louis XIV until the Revolution saw all the reliquaries broken down for parts and the organs sold. Long story short, King Louis's heart was stolen by this guy named Pow and given to his friend Lord Harcourt, the Archbishop of York. Fast forward to 1848, Buckland was invited to dinner at his homie's palace, who is none other than Lord Harcourt. At the dinner party, Lord Harcourt passed around the mummified heart of King Louis XIV of France. Can you guess what happens next? If you guess he ate the heart, then you would be correct. Although I couldn't find conclusive evidence as to whether he ate just a piece or the whole thing, it's still pretty messed up. I guess you could say the way to Buckland's heart was through his stomach. Anyways, Buckland died a couple years after that. It was probably from eating weird shit. Did you know that teenagers are usually exceedingly horny, stupid as fuck, and relatively have what can only be described as a warped sense of humor? Oh, you did? Yeah, me too. Well, nowadays, teenagers aren't usually given the keys to the kingdom. Unlike our next bizarre person who totally fucked up a bunch of other people's lives. Enter Elagabalus. And this bro was wild. He started off his life in exile, which is because, and you gotta hear this, his father was brutally stabbed on the side of a road while taking a piss. Imagine you're minding your own business, relieving yourself, and some bushwhacker comes from nowhere and shanks you. What a dick. Anyways, at the ripe old age of 14, Elagabalus' mom decided that it was finally his time to regain his title. They got support from the Roman legion and went into the battle against the current emperor, Macrinus. Long story short, the armies fight, Elagabalus wins, his legion chases down Macrinus and cut off his head. And also his son's head, because what's a better gift to a new emperor than a 10-year-old's head? So, what is Elagabalus' first order of business now that he's emperor? Pretty sure that he threw a fat sex party, but the actual translation's been lost over time. What we do know is that he took all the imperial titles associated with becoming emperor and kind of just ignored getting them confirmed by the Senate, which is a big no-no in this time in history. You see, Romans placed great importance on respect in politics and religion. Now with that said, what do you think the next thing that he fucked up was? You got it, religion. Elagabalus did not believe in the same Roman pantheon that everyone else believed in, and preferred his foreign pantheon, where the supreme deity was Elagaba, the son of God. He had all the religious artifacts of the Roman pantheon moved to his own personal temple so that any religious worship had to include him as well. Because he saw himself as a god, Elagabalus decided he would take one of the Vestal Virgins, which was a celibate virgin who dedicated her life to the gods, and force her to become his wife so she could give him a godly baby. He would never keep a wife longer than a few months. He was married 5 times, but would constantly have sex with whoever he wanted, including men. He would procure men for political office based solely on the size of their wanker, and he made more use of them than just their consul, availing himself to more anal sex than you believe a teenager could fit into just 3 years on the throne. As you can imagine, this didn't sit well with everyone. Elagabalus was excessively obsessed with sex. In his free time, you could find him dressed as a woman, pretending to be a prostitute, or charging large sums of money for men to sleep with him, which makes him the first and only femboy emperor prostitute in human history. I would like to think this would be accepted in our society today, but probably not back then. Eventually, he just pissed off everyone. His cousin would attempt to overthrow him and succeed, and at just 18 years of age, and after 3 years on the throne, Elagabalus was chased down and slaughtered by his own bodyguard. Oh yeah, and it was next to a toilet. He literally got slaughtered next to the shitter.